Welcome to the thisABILITY Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team thisABILITY.
Hi, I'm Andrea Anderson, and
I'm Chip Dodd from Team thisABILITY Adventure Racing.
We have Tomas Diaz and Jim Farmer with us tonight. They're going to talk about the Chattanooga Epic that just happened, 48-hour race. Tomas did that race solo, and you might recognize his name because he does a lot of commentary on our Facebook page, and he's usually following our Dot. Well, this time we got to follow his Dot, and so we wanted to hear straight from him how the race went and what he thought about it. And you also might remember that he raced with Chip in the Endless Mountains last year and the Shenandoah Epic last year. So he's been a team member of Team thisABILITY in the past. So we're excited to have him. And Jim Farmer, we know him from a lot of different races, a longtime racer himself. He usually races as Privateer Chattanooga with his wife, Susie. And they're a lot of fun. I think Jim is somewhat new to designing courses of this length. So he'll tell us more about his history, and we're excited to hear about it. But let's just start with a brief history of your adventure racing experience and where you're from. So Jim, why don't you start?
Yeah, I'm Jim Farmer. I live in Chattanooga, hence the Privateer Chattanooga name. And I did my first adventure race, and I think it was 99 or 2000. And during the aughts, I did Primal Quest 10-day and, Beast of the East and, just all kinds of, I might have had a problem. I was addicted for a good 8 or 9 years. Then I had a life change and sort of dialed it back. And now, Susie and I now we're attached to the hip, and we race as Privateer Chattanooga as a 2-person team pretty exclusively. And we did Endless last year and C to C, but most of the time it's the 12 to 24-hour races that we do. But I probably have pushing 70 races under my belt at this point. So I'm long in the tooth.
Awesome. And you've done some designing before, or is that new?
Yeah. And I've helped with some races, but the shorter races, nothing of this magnitude, for sure.
Awesome. So Tomas, tell us about your adventure racing history.
Well, it's like a 2.5 years only, because my first one was in a winter race here in Michigan, and I think it was in 2021. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I still don't. I still don't. That race, I showed up. It was a short 3-hour race, and I showed up, and then I basically asked the race director, "How do I use this compass?" Because I didn't know about okay, I know it points north, but what is this roundy thing? What is this roundy thing? So then he showed me. I was like, "Oh, cool!" And then I just went ahead and did it. And in that race, I got second place solo. So since then, I was hooked. And then, of course, I went and I did a lot of other ones, and some I arrived last, some I didn't do anything, some I did well, some I did really bad. So it's a combination of all of them. I've done a lot of short ones, and mostly I've done solo ones, especially the short ones. And the short ones, at least, they tend to be, at least in my region, if there's longer ones and shorter ones together, they tend to be less competition. So therefore, I've been podium in those short ones. But then I get, of course, in the longer ones, then I don't podium, I'm like way down. So just to get the ego in check, get it all down now. So it's a mixture of all of them. But I got hooked, and I wanted to pretty much do as much as possible. So in the last 2.5 years, I think I've done, I stopped counting, I think like more than 20 or so. Something like that. Between the short races and the long races is about 20. Last year, when I did 3 expedition races, I wasn't even planning on doing 3 expedition races. They just happened. As in, like, hey, want to come join me? Sure, yeah, let's join. Kind of like that. So I've been, like you said, like Jim, like you said, it's an addiction. So I've been addicted. This year, I have to tone it down a little bit because my wife was already being annoyed about me being away from the house for so long, and she's not joining me. Yeah. I don't have like a wife like you. She's not joining me. Right. And none of my children are joining me either. So I mean, that's it. I'm on my own then on this one. So then that's it. And I just got hooked, and I just keep doing them. And I actually love them a lot.
And Tomas, where do you live?
I live in Michigan.
Okay.
In north of Detroit.
Right. So you've got some races to choose from up there.
There are several, but here in Michigan right now, all of them are, the longest is like 12 hours. That's it. 12 hours, maybe 14 hours. That's the longest ones here. There's a lot of 6 and 10s. There's several 3s. There's a local orienteering club, and I do a lot of those to keep me also humble, because the orienteering ones, they do some red courses, and I go for the red courses, and they keep me humble because I'm usually either last or second to last. So the short AR races, I'm kind of like almost always at the podium. The red courses in orienteering, I'm also like on the bottom. But it forces me to be a better navigator, which I need a lot of. I still working on my navigational skills, because I don't think they're good yet. But don't we all?
Be that bad if you're on the podium of the after just a short period of time.
The short ones, they just tend to have a little easier navigation, and therefore I can do better. Once the navigation gets trickier, then that's where I need to focus more, and that's why I force myself to do the red courses on orienteering, because they do way more difficult navigation in those, and you have to get them all in order. So yeah, so that's how that's basically all my experience with adventure racing. I didn't even touch a mountain bike until 2021, and my first mountain bike ride wasn't. I basically signed up for an adventure race, and I'm like, oh, I don't have a mountain bike. I need to buy a mountain bike, so I bought a mountain bike, and I practiced, and then I went ahead and did it. So
that's awesome. Like your story, again, I wish we had more time to go into it, but you went from like a huge body, you lost a ton of weight, got fit, changed your life. Adventure racing was part of that. So props to you for taking it from like couch all the way to like you're signed up for a 10-day race in some country that your wife doesn't know about. I'm so excited to see you guys.
No, I did tell her because like she was like, oh, I want to do an. She told me. I know we're going a little bit off track, but basically I didn't tell her about Africa. But she told me that she wanted to do like a safari in Africa. I was like, oh, this October, it's gonna happen then. Let's do it this October.
Happen to do a race there for 10 days, right?
Yes,
safari. This is awesome.
It was like the correct moment to tell her.
Yeah. Okay.
We're getting off track just a little.
I know we're getting off track.
So we'll get back to that for sure.
Okay. So you can Jim, what? Okay. Since I've been racing, there's not been a race in Chattanooga. Like, what inspired you to create the race, and tell us about the overview of the race and your design process and all of that.
Yeah. So first, just an aside, my story is very similar to Tomas's, but it was 25 years ago. I was 185 pounds. I'm 5'8", and it was all a tub of goo. I was working too much and, whatever. And I watched a crazy show called the Eco Challenge back in the day and started doing this stuff. So I'm very similar in that I bit off more than I can chew and jumped in with both feet. But now, everybody's like, oh, you're so experienced. Well, at one point I had no idea what I was doing. So anyway, so I've been designing courses, and I'm sure Chip and Andrea and everybody does at some point. Every time we go out for a ride or go explore a new area, I'm like, that'd be a great place for a checkpoint. Or how would I, I'm always like looking at the map, or I know the map in my head and thinking, how would I get from here to here? So I've been designing this course, or maybe not this particular course. There were some things that I had to work with that I might not have chosen by myself, but I'm dreaming these things up all the time, because I geek out on it. I love it. So, so I've been dreaming about a race of this magnitude for 25 years. Also I wanted to show off Chattanooga. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I lived in Kentucky and Illinois and everywhere, and came to Chattanooga, and I moved here in 96. And they say converts make the best zealots, and I'm a convert, and I'm definitely a zealot. So I was very excited about showing off what we have to offer here. And I will say, for those folks who did it this year, we just scratched the surface. There are all kinds of other playgrounds that will be employed in future races. So that's the inspiration for it. And it was just a joy to see come to fruition. The overview is, so we put out a schematic about 3 weeks before the race, a quick prologue around downtown, and which I think was kind of fun. Although, a quick aside, I set out those checkpoints at 8 o'clock the morning of, just because they were right around downtown. And CP number 1 got pinched in the 4 hours between the two.
Wow.
And it was cable locked. and still got cut and taken. Luckily, I was there. I was taking video, and I was like, "Just go, it's gone." And luckily, no other checkpoints were gone. So anyway, quick prologue just to kind of break people up, and then start the long paddle down the Tennessee River, which, as most people probably know, they were following the race. The week before, it was high of 76 or 77 and beautiful. It was over 90 that day, and the sun beating down. So that paddle became a long, tough one, but there was a decent breeze. So anyway, 34-mile paddle. There was a short course option. I won't go into that, but you were kind of like, yeah, it was like a true short course, and you were behind everybody else from there. So only a few people took that. Then a long bike section, 60 plus miles, depending on route choices, but a lot of single track, which is what I wanted to highlight. And then to Pigeon Mountain, where the caves were, big long trek again in the heat, which definitely changed it changed the race. That was the crux of the race. Then another bike section, about 30 miles with a significant climb and a cave CP. And then the last transition was in Cloudland Canyon State Park, absolutely beautiful. And Tomas's background there is one of the checkpoints of the overlook there as the sun was rising, perfect timing. And then they had a relatively easy 22-mile ride into the finish, including an alpaca farm, CP, which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, that's pretty much the course.
So it sounds like a lot of times you start out with the average racer kind of starts out with the 6 hour, the 10 hour, the 8 hour, whatever in their backyard, and then usually get to 24, it starts getting kind of hard. 48, was that your intent? Like the idea, like the 48, like after you're done with this one, you could go to the C2C or do another 3 or 4 day race, because I think a 30-something mile paddle is not, your average racer is not used to that, or the early bike ride.
Right. So the 48 hours. So this is an AR Georgia Warrior Adventure Racing race. Jeff Leininger puts those on. So I was kind of, commissioned, if you will, although didn't get paid anything. I'm still waiting my check. Kidding.
Peanuts are coming.
I don't want to get paid anything. This was, it's a labor of love. But it was an AR Georgia race, and Jeff puts on C2C, and he puts on some 24-hour races. So he thought that the 48 was a good, kind of middle ground sort of race. I would really like just to at least have a 24-hour option, even if we did the 48 again next year. There's so many opportunities to put on some really good 24-hour races around here. But so yeah, that was Jeff's baby to do the 48. Yeah, I mean, I don't like, if you do a 24, you can do a 72. I don't know if the 48 is necessarily a jumping off point, but I think he's just experimenting with that and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So Tomas, what did you think about the 48-hour length, and what drew you to go to that race? It was quite a distance for you to get there. And I'm curious, like, did you feel prepared, and how did you prepare for it? Oh, and one more. Why did you do it solo?
Okay. Those are excellent questions. I signed up to this race like 2 weeks prior to it. So I was thinking about it, and I didn't know if I was going to do it or not. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know what? I'm doing it. Boom. And because you're doing it with so short time, well, I don't have a time to get a team or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it solo. Let's do it. And that's it. So there's not much thought process into it. I did like, however, as somebody who's coming from farther away, I did like the fact that it was 48 hours, because then it allows me the time to drive. And when I'm driving there, I need at least 2 days, because I am driving while I'm also working. So I have to make a lot of stops, then get my laptop, work remotely, then keep driving, then do something, and then stop again, take my laptop, do something. So I still have to go ahead and take care of my work, because I didn't want to take any vacation days. So the 48 hours work fine in my favor. And then on the way back, basically, I just slept the whole Monday. After the race, I slept like for 14 hours straight. And then again, Monday was just driving back, stopping, working, driving, or stopping, working, and so on. So the 48 hours, being somebody from farther away from Chattanooga, actually worked in my favor. Had it been 72 hours, I probably wouldn't have been able to put it in without taking any vacation days and stuff. So that actually worked in my favor. What were the other questions? I'm sorry.
I think you got all of them. Oh, yeah. How did you prepare?
Yeah.
And I already know that you fit training into your life in pretty unique ways. You were talking about getting your groceries.
Yes.
Tell us about how you train.
Yeah. Well, okay. I like you already know, I went from like 270 pounds all the way down to like 150 pounds, but I'm now back up a little bit. I need to go ahead and slim down again because I'm getting a little belly here that I need to get rid of. So part of the training is, first of all, I was doing when a few days I had to go to the office, I was biking there and back with my backpack and the laptop and everything, and that's 20 miles each way. But the beautiful thing is that from here to there, it's only 6 miles of road, and everything else is like simple single track and paved trails to the woods. So my commute there was awesome. So that's one way. The other way that I incorporate that into my life is like whenever I do groceries right now for the whole family, I run 2 miles there with the empty bags and tie downs and everything, and then put all the groceries in the backpacks. Put whatever didn't fit in the backpacks. I tied with trailer tie downs to my bags, even like the big bulky stuff that is like, paper towels and stuff like that. And I had like this huge thing on my back, and then I walk back from the grocery store 2 miles. And that's how I have to incorporate some of the training into everyday activities. And likewise, whenever I have to go to the hardware store or whatever, I have to use always either have a bicycle with a trailer or carry something with it. So I am trying to incorporate whatever simple tasks that day-to-day activities we do. I say, no, I got to do it not using the car. And then, when I go to the grocery store, and I have people there in the grocery store taking pictures of me because like this. The one time I actually overdo it was when I came home and I actually weighed all the items. It was 120 pounds.
God, that's a lot.
And it was hot. And I want to keep it to 80 pounds now. I mean, it was like, I came here beat up. It's like, no, 120 was too much.
So have you ever had to call home and say, I need you to pick me up. I overdid it this time.
Nope. Cat litter, 50-pound bag.
No, because I don't have to quit. The other thing I did also to prepare for this race in particular, because even though I didn't sign up for it, I was thinking about it. Is like when I went to Puerto Rico, I wanted to go from the beach to the highest summit in the east coast of the island through trails in the shortest amount of time and put a fastest amount of time there, which I did, and I put it there. And basically, and it's all trails. There were 4 river crossings, and there were not trails that were not usually used in El Yunque rainforest. So I went through some areas. There were even a landslide that I had to like sketchy area and go through it. But I did manage to do it, and it managed to go from the beach to the top. It was 4,000 feet, which is nothing for Chattanooga. 4,000 feet.
That's leg one.
Yeah, but still, I did it. I tried to do it. I mean, it was like somewhat rocky terrain. The trails were not that great to run or whatever, so I had to like walk fast through them, especially the river crossings and stuff like that. So I was able to do it I wanted to do it in less than 6 hours, and I did manage to do it in less than 6 hours. So that worked in my favor, all carrying everything, all the water. I had to stop at the Junque and get some water from non-potable water and treat it or whatever, So that's one way that I kind of wanted to prepare, because I don't have any hills here in Michigan. So I wanted to at least, okay, I'm there in Puerto Rico, I might as well just go ahead and do this, And I also,
Tomas, you talk rather quickly. So I thought I would just reiterate that what Tomas said is he went to Puerto Rico, where he's from, and he set a fastest known time. So he may even be challenging anyone out there. What mountain was it?
El Toro.
El Toro.
The highest summit of El Yunque rainforest.
Gotcha.
Right. So when we go to Puerto Rico, our job's to crush your time.
There you go. I'm signing up too. Let's do this thing.
Yeah. Oh, you can crush it. You guys can crush it for sure.
Stepped in.
Yeah.
But that was also heat training, right? And so
yes.
I think we need to pass it off to Jim. Like, were there any particular sections of the course that you designed that was the pure intent was for testing the racers? Like, what did you think would be the breaking point, and did it play out?
So yes, I knew the crux would be the first big trek in Pigeon Mountain, just because there's so much elevation, and the route choices were, there were definitely a lot of choices and a lot of climbing, and places where you can get cliffed out, and so there was I knew that would be the crux, but it wasn't necessarily because of all those things. It was because of the heat. So this was the first, like literally, the one thing you have no control over is the weather. And, like I said, so real quick, there's a picture that, and I'll probably post it somewhere, like the juxtaposition. So before the race, Jeff allowed me to create kind of a Chattanooga Epic Facebook page, which you guys should go out to check out, Chattanooga Epic Adventure Race, especially for stuff for next year. But I had been posting notes from the field. It's just when we were out like scouting or setting checkpoints, I would just sit by a creek and say, guess where I'm at, and talk about, the race and the different things that they'll see. One of the last ones, which was literally a week and a half before the race start, I'm placing a flag on a tree behind a waterfall. So it's a cliff, over there, and the water's just a parabolic curve coming off of it, shooting off the back, and it's a big veil of water. Legendary Randy Erickson, who is our race photographer, took a picture of this checkpoint on a tree, and I like, where is that? Like I hung that, but where? There was the waterfall, but the waterfall is now a trickle behind the tree, okay, not cascading over the top of the tree. So literally in a week and a half, we went from spring and just major flows to absolute arid, dry summer. Summer hit hard in the week before the race and dried up a lot of those creeks. So water was tough to come by out there when we were not expecting that to be a problem. And plus just the intense heat, they're 24, 30 hours in at this point. And so that was, I knew that would be the crux of the race, but I didn't realize, how much, just because of the environmental factors that we couldn't really anticipate. So, yeah.
Were you able to adapt and like go get water to have water at TAs or?
Oh, no,
potable?
We had water at every TA. We had food. The TAs were fine. We were fully expecting people to easily get water. They were still able to get water. It wasn't like people coming in, just completely dehydrated. But they had to be more judicious. They learned quickly that, okay, this is pretty dry. The waterfalls, there were 3 waterfall CPs on that section. They still had water coming off, although it was more than a trickle. But it was just not a week before it would have been, they just dip and go anywhere they wanted to. Like it changed that quickly, that rapidly. Which was definitely, and we thought about putting water out on the course, and we were out driving around checking on people. So it was a little bit of triage there, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But yeah, it was definitely not anticipated. Until the last minute when we saw what the conditions were, because they changed within days, like literally within days, because we were out on the course days before it, and it wasn't that bad.
I guess also experienced teams would see that paddle early in the race and go, ooh, we've got to hydrate and have electrolytes and cover ourselves up.
Totally.
I think Lisa was like, she said,
totally
preparing for a Sahara desert, smart, like everything's white and covered up. Like you don't want your skin exposed because you get off that paddle and you're sunburned, you're dehydrated. Yeah. The race is over and you haven't even gotten to the crux.
Right. Yeah. And luckily there was a good breeze Friday for the racers. Sometimes it was headwind, unfortunately. But also there was more current than I anticipated. So that helped with the paddle. So the times in the paddle were actually just slightly quicker than I anticipated. So that was a good thing to get them off the water. And we had a short course option for folks that were the tail end of the snake that just weren't interested in placement. But we just transported them from the 20-mile mark to the TA. We just couldn't allow them to ride because it was too busy of a road. And that was part of the reason that it's a 34-mile paddle, just because there was no good place to take out and get them on bikes without, a safety concern. So, yeah, course design, a lot of it is, in my head, I like to lay out things and it sounds all great. But then when you get into the minutia and say, okay, I don't want them on this road, I got to figure out something else. So yeah, a lot of that was that came into play.
So in all of these type of things, if it bleeds, it leads. So
okay.
Tomas, what was what was the crux of the race for you? When did stuff go off the rails, or maybe not? What was the top 1 or 2 moments where you were like, holy crap, what have I got myself into?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't cut off the rails. I would cut it more like there were the off the rail moments, and then just the what have I gotten into moments. The what have I gotten into moments was, of course, the long paddle. And I've paddled those kinds of distances before. I did it with you in Endless.
Yep.
But it's one thing to do with a team, but another thing to do it completely alone.
Yep.
Nobody to talk to but yourself. So it was more, I mean, I was ready for the heat. I was ready for the sun. I had my long white sleeves. I have my thing. I have sunglasses. I even had a duct tape that was tied to my sunglasses, covering my nose. So I was ready for the sun. And as I was paddling, I had plenty of water. I had 6 liters of water on me, and which I drank them all until until the mile 20 anyway, and got the water there. And I constantly take the water bottle that was empty, and I just like show it on myself. It was refreshing. So that part, the physical part, to me, that's not a problem. The mental part, especially at the end, the mental part, the talking to yourself, the singing, the counting, the numbers, doing something, that part really got me. It was just the mental side of it, because it's just and there's no rapids, there's no.
Right.
I mean, so more than the physical challenge, to me at least as a soloist, it was the mental side of it. I was just going insane on the last 2 hours or so.
How many hours for the average paddle? How many hours did it take from beginning to end of the 30-something miles?
Well, the Mike Garrison, who ended up winning the race, it was probably 8 hours for him. I think he got in about it was probably 8:15. A little under 8. But the belly of the snake was probably more the 10-hour mark. But the last team came in almost 1 o'clock, 1:30. So that's 12 hours,
12 hours. Yeah. So for a solo like Tomas, that's a long time to be talking to.
Yeah.
And
the boats that they were in, they were not good boats. So
yes. Yeah. Mine was a small boat, and I did it in 11 hours. And I did the prologue in about a little bit over 30 minutes. I did it at a pace that I was comfortable with, not too fast, but not too slow either. I didn't want to exert myself. I knew that the moment I was going to get into the paddle, that almost everybody else was going to pass me anyway. I knew that ahead of time anyway. And as a matter of fact, I think I went into the river like maybe right after the top teams, and then of course I can see them all passing me, and nothing I can do, then they're all passing me. But then that means that most of the time I had nobody there. So the faster ones were ahead of me, the slower ones were behind me, and I was just all there by myself, talking to myself in the paddle. So yeah, to me, I thought I was gonna get there by midnight. I actually got there by 11:30. So I actually got there ahead of where I was thinking I was gonna get there.
Yeah.
So at least that was good.
Yeah. Huh? I said that's always nice. But I mean, just if you don't mind just throwing out, that was a very pretty paddle, even though it was not enjoyable to do 34 miles. It's through the Tennessee River Gorge, which is very, very beautiful.
Yes, it was beautiful. Yes. Yeah. But it was better if I was with somebody else.
Totally.
That's all.
I just had to throw that.
But also, congratulations on doing a race this big solo. Yeah. I mean, you're the nav, you're the Sherpa, you're the mechanic, you're the all of it. I know it's like the elite division is the 3-person co-ed and all of that, but I got to give it, solo in an 8-hour race is like no-brainer. But when you get into the multi-day races, it's admirable that you had the confidence and the experience to go in and do that race. So props to you on that. So
Jim, there's one more thing. One more thing about the paddle is that in their logistics, it said 20 miles, right? And I thought that, there must be one of those out and back pulse points. So I'm skipping that one. I don't do the 20 mile. And then Jim says, no, the 20 mile is a short course. Well, guess then I have to do the full 35 miles. Then that's how it is. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. Then
there's no quitting on day one of a
exactly
a 2-day race.
Yeah.
So Jim, speaking of navigation and all of that complexity, I guess just describe the navigation of this course. Was it a lot of bushwhacking? Was it difficult? Did you keep it simple? And then were you surprised by any decisions team on the route choice?
I mean, come on, you're always surprised. You're always like, what are they doing? Okay. You're watching the tracker. There's always surprises, but my thought process for the race, obviously the prologue was just to break people up. And, to Tomas's, he's obviously experienced enough to know you don't blow yourself up, in the first 30 minutes. But you see those teams, it's just they're raring to go and they go and then they just fade, quickly because they blew themselves up in the first 30 minutes. But yeah, so the paddle section was just not really difficult, and I gave explicit directions on how to get. But there's a lot of private property. I didn't want people going off into the hinterland, so they weren't tough CPs. The bike, and Tomas might be able to allude to this a little bit. He might get in a little over his head. The early CPs. I thought so. AR Georgia doesn't like to do the kind of the mandatory and pro point sort of concept. It's just everything's a row gain between the TAs and you just get what you want, sort of thing. But I thought that it was fairly obvious, some of the pro points, but maybe not to some folks. So along this big bike section, I got them up onto Lookout Mountain. There's a big climb up to get to that. And then it's all trails, for probably, 20 plus miles, depending on route choices and what have you, probably maybe closer to 30 of trail systems. And there were checkpoints kind of that were out of the main, loop, if you will, or route that I would think would be pro checkpoints. And also to that, I gave them supplemental maps for the trail system. So you had the generic map, but then the trail systems themselves with all the details and all the names. So I didn't want, my thought process is it's all about route choices and about assessing like what your capabilities are. So, hey, that's on a Black Diamond trail. I'm not a great single track rider. I might want to skip those. Not everybody did that. So yeah, I mean, the idea was there are some basic points along the way, and you could stay on these trail systems on green trails for the most part and just kind of get through and get a few checkpoints and head on out. But all of the, pro points, if you will, were on blue and black trails that were kind of either out and backs or, loops off of the loop that required a little more work. And they're tough, fun trails. I can clear all of these trails when I'm out riding, but after, your legs are softened up from, a 34-mile paddle and, whatever, they're definitely a little bit tougher. But I was shocked at some of there was one at a mining tipple. So I tried to put in a lot of cool historic places in there for CPs. And one of them is, it's called a mining tipple, and a lot of coal mining in this area. So it's just, this structure that the coal car runs underneath and it drops the, coal into the car. So it heads on out. And there's just these ruins down there, but it's at the bottom of a gorge, and there's a trail that runs to it, a black trail. But I was kind of shocked that even some of the top teams would just take the green trails around to the top of this gorge and then just go off on foot and just run down and punch it and run back in their bike shoes. That kind of shocked me. Even top teams, I can understand some slower teams, but people that I would, are good mountain bikers. And I guess their thought process was even if they could ride down to it, they'd be pushing their bike back out, which maybe, like I said, those are things that's like, oh, okay. No, I can.
And it's different muscle groups, right? Your legs are going on. It's nice to get off the bike sometimes and do the hike bike or run a section. Yeah.
So there was that was one thing that kind of shocked me. And there were a few places where I put in checkpoints that were, if you were paying attention, there were ways to kind of get the checkpoint. There was one, I think it was maybe 23, 21. I think it was 21. But anyway, it was kind of near a road. But if you were paying attention versus, and there was one of the top racers actually lost 2 spots in that section. So there's a good picture that Randy took of people pushing their bikes up, off this, power line cut up to the road. So you could save a good 20 minutes on that. Whereas the other racer just decided to stay on the trail, maybe just missed it or not paying attention. So yeah, I tried to throw in those little nuggets to see what people did and just, give them, I like that kind of stuff. I like it when I'm racing, and I definitely like to, incorporate that into a course.
Yeah. So let's stay on that topic of strategy. Sure. I know like the top number 1 person, Michael Garrison, cleared the course.
Yep.
I don't think anyone else did. So everybody had to play the game of, what could they get in the amount of time they were given. And Tomas, I'm curious, like, when did you start thinking you needed to cut things, or did you have that strategy from the beginning? Did you have any strategic decisions that you regret, or how did you handle that?
Okay. So I even though I knew I was not going to clear, I just still trace the route to clear anyway, even though I know no. And then when I do that, I put the route to clear, but then I still say, okay, maybe I should skip this one, maybe I should skip that one. So I kind of do that ahead of time. However, of course, with all plans that have to like just change anyway, because like once I went to the one that he's talking about, the one in the Diamond Trail, the Double Diamond Trail, I looked at the map. I forgot to look at the description of it being a double diamond, and I just went for it. Oh yeah, this looks pretty good. It looks pretty reasonable, and I got into it. And yes, it was hard cycling, was Diamond Trail, everything. But in addition to that, the trails also were a little bit messed up. And then I was all by myself because I, got off the paddle quite late. Nobody else of the teams behind were going through that point. So I wasted a lot of time on that checkpoint. It was a very, very hard checkpoint, number 15. And then it was off the trail, but it was also on a boulder. But after the boulder, there were like a laurel thicket of fields. I mean, it was quite difficult to get. So I spent a long time on that one. And once I spent a long time on that one, I realized, okay, I'm screwed. I'm way behind. And I have to like start skipping more now. That's it. So that's the first time where I started to skip right after that one. However, even though I wasted 2 hours or whatever I wasted time on that one, I actually feel quite good about it in the sense that it was a hard one and it was all by myself. There was nobody else in the middle of the night there. No other teams no other headlamps that I can look at. Nobody. So it was just me all alone trying to look for the down checkpoint, and I actually found it. So even though I wasted a lot of time on that one and it just put me way behind, I'm still feel good about it because it was a fun one and I liked it. So, but then once after that was done, I was like, okay, I gotta get the hell out of here now because I'm way behind.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Tomas, normally race directors, in addition to making you suffer, like you're talking about, they usually put out like the amazing points to show off their backyards. Are there any really highlights that you experienced during the race? Like you got the overlook in your background. Like tell us about the highlights of the race that weren't suffering.
Unfortunately, I was not able to get to any of the caves or the waterfalls because of the route choices that I had to make, and I had to like skip and everything. And when I went to the cave, for example, there was another issue. I'll talk about that issue. So most of the highlights for me, like the tunnel, one of the tunnels after the TA, before the TA, after the bike was a highlight for me. And I didn't, even though I messed up a lot, even though I didn't sleep for the whole time, I wouldn't really consider it suffering. The only time I went a little bit crazy was on the last time of the paddle, but everything else, I actually enjoyed all of it. So even when I got really, really messed up, there was one, I talk about that later when we're getting to Pigeon Mountain. There was one time where I really messed up for sure. So most of the time I was just messing up really badly. In this race, I think I did the most navigations errors ever. I think I put the most miles per checkpoints on this race. So
I would agree. I concur.
Yeah.
We were watching your dot. We know what you did.
Yeah, but it was still a lot of fun. I still enjoyed the whole thing. I wouldn't say like a specific highlight. Maybe the overlook was a highlight. Yeah, the overlook was probably the highlight. But I enjoyed all of it. Even when I was all messed up and I couldn't find the trails, and I was, and I don't know. I just enjoyed the whole thing. I don't consider it suffering. I don't know.
What he's talking about is the TAG, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia Railroad Tunnel. It's 1,700 foot abandoned railroad tunnel, and there's tons of them around here. So that was what he was referring to. But yeah, the caves are neat. There's so many caves around here, and they weren't difficult like checkpoints once you got in the cave. Finding the cave sometimes was a little bit of navigation work. And we had another one on the second to last bike, and then. Of course, I wanted to highlight downtown, and the prologue, was at the aquarium and at the museum, and in the sculpture garden and all these different things. So yeah, we took great pride in trying to find some really neat. And there was another overlook on Pigeon, and of course Cloudland that you see behind you. You know, it was spectacular. So yeah, I think there were a lot of really pretty points along the way. Not everybody got to them. I think you know, we only had one person clear the course. I know that the top 4 would have cleared the course if it was the weekend before and not the first 90-degree, 100% humidity day. That definitely, you know, put the damper on things.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a little disappointing for you, knowing that, you know, there's some great CPs out there that some folks didn't get. And watching the videos, like the Pettyjohn Cave, I think it was, I thought that looked really cool. It seemed like it was pretty deep in there.
Yeah.
That you had to kind of go through a little bit of a choke point to get down in there.
Yeah. Yeah. All
That's
of them
cool.
were walk-ins. Nothing was, you know, sketchy or claustrophobic, really. I didn't think so.
I wouldn't have called that a walk-in from the video.
Okay.
It was kind of like a butt slide in.
All right. All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
But it looked super cool. And even alpacas were one of your checkpoints. That's pretty unique. So I'm wondering though, with all those unique places that you picked out, did you have to work around any logistical challenges? And how did that work out? I know that Warrior Races, their TAs are awesome too. So
yeah,
how did you manage that?
Well, I mean, that's mostly Jeff, although, you know, my wife and my brother came from Frankfort, Kentucky to help with the race. I had a lot of friends that jumped in to manage TAs. I don't know if you guys know Johnny Hand, but his wife, Stephanie, was I called her the NVV, the most valuable volunteer. So yeah, a lot of people stepped up to help because yes, the TAs were well stocked, cooking burgers. You know, my friend Jeremy and Thomas were cooking my brother Thomas were cooking burgers at TA4. And, you know, yeah, there's plenty of food, plenty of water, but getting in and out of those places was definitely a logistical, you know, issue. It was a very rough road to get in and out, and we had to do a few rescues. You know, I wouldn't say rescues, you know, people were just like, I can't go any farther. And we tried to push and prod and stuff, but some people just needed to be taken out. So there was a lot
didn't know that.
lot of trips. Yeah, I mean, I think we had 5, you know, total that didn't quite make it.
Wow.
Mostly heat problems. You know, I mean, just stomach issues and heat problems. So yeah, I mean, that we knew and we were prepared for no matter what. It was probably a little more problematic than we had anticipated just because of the heat. But you know, the logistics are really in the preparation. I mean, I was dealing with close to a dozen property and land managers, you know, to get approvals, and then they always come with restrictions. And so, yeah, I mean, there was constant reconnoitering of things to pull this race off. So, yeah, it's a lot of logistics, you know, issues. The good thing working with Jeff and AR Georgia is, you know, all the minutia of registration, all that, you know, I was just trying to get a course together and all dealing with the land managers. So all that other stuff was taken care of.
Yeah. So 48 hours, there's not many races out there that are 48 hours. It seems like there's a lot of 24s, and then Jeff starts the other C2C 72. And then from there, it goes into the 5-day and the 10-day. So Tomas, like 48 hours is probably your first 40-hour race, 48, I guess, because it's not normal. What did you think about that length? Like for future race directors, should they consider that? Did you like it, you know, better than the 24, or you think they should have gone to 36? And then you have to sleep at some point. Like 24, anybody can blow through a 24, no problem if you're experienced. 48, you got to sleep at some point, right?
Yes. I think the 48 was good in the sense that, like, you could do it as a weekend warrior. The 72 is a little bit more difficult for a weekend warrior, so that actually works. Maybe the 36 works better for a weekend warrior, but the 48 actually, at least in this case, it worked for me, and it was the longest length that I've done solo, so it actually worked for me. With regards to sleep, what I wanted to do is different than what actually happened. What I wanted to do was I wanted to sleep on Saturday afternoon or so, right? The problem is that when I tried to sleep, the mosquitoes were like, so I cannot sleep. So I just went. I never yawned though. I didn't get a really good night's sleep the night before. The night before, I just did like 6 hours of sleep, but that was still good enough for me for the race. I woke up. I think I woke up at 5 in the morning or so on the Friday, and I still had to take care. While I was doing the maps, I was taking care of a meeting with the office. So, so, I mean, it was still a work day for me, so I still had to take care of business. So, but it worked fine, right? And then, so I spent that time without sleep, and I didn't even yawn. So for some reason, it wasn't an issue. Now, I did get the caffeine pills. I did get my stuff to be awake. And then, since I couldn't sleep because of the mosquitoes, then I try again at TA4. Mosquitoes again, couldn't sleep. Okay, so I cannot sleep. So let's go do it. So finally, I was able to get a sleep. So it's not like I was like, oh, I want to go the whole. It's not like I was like, oh, I'm going to go the full 48 without sleeping. No, I didn't want to do that. So the one sleep that I was able to get was Sunday morning, and it must have been already for me like 50 hours of no sleep if I include the time when I was awake the early morning. And then I just put myself in this position, and I was able to take a nice 15-minute nap. It was nice. It was good, and that's all I needed. And then that's it. That's all I needed. So in my case, for some reason, it worked in my favor. I didn't have any sleep monsters. Didn't have any issues with that. When I was going downhill, I didn't have my usual double vision when I'm sleepy or no sleep monster. So it was all good. It seems like the 48 hours actually worked for me in that case.
Tomas was sitting on the ground of this picnic shelter at TA5 and talking. I know that's a shocker. Talking to this, and then all of a sudden, like the conversation ended, and we look over, and there's a picture of him just like this, looking at his map, but he's not looking at his map. He's fell asleep.
Nice.
He spent 15, 20 minutes like that, and we just let him sleep, and he popped back up. But it was just funny because it's like, oh, wait a minute, where did Tomas go? Because he stopped talking, like the conversation ended. You look around, and he's just passed out on the floor.
At least the 30-mile paddle wasn't like the last leg. Solos are just going to crash and burn.
No, I'm not that cruel. No, I wouldn't do it. And plus, logistically, the boat at the front end made the most sense in terms of getting boats in and out and everything else.
So you don't need a dark zone because you knew they'd be off the water before dark, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was on the river, so there was no reason for dark zone. But it's just, I wouldn't. It was bad enough. So one of the logistical challenges, just to go back that for just a second, is that Pigeon Mountain, which Jeff got into caving, so Jeff wanted to incorporate this into the race, and so it was difficult to kind of get in and out. But after this trek, they are now at the southernmost point of the course, and the only way back is riding 30 and 20, so nearly 60 miles. So there's no short course option from there. The short course option was get to Cloudland Canyon TA5, skip the trek, which a lot of people did, and then just get back on your bike and go to the finish line. But for people in the state that they were in, it was at TA4 after that trek. It was, I had to put on my, I'm not the race director, but kind of a race director sort of hat at that point. Jeff. So the way the logistics works, Jeff sets up the TAs and moves on to the next one. So he stays ahead of the snake. I'm dealing with mostly the belly and the tail. And so getting people, I have to admit, I was very emotional and choked up, and still kind of even just thinking about it. There were people who were wanting to quit, and very badly. And I understood it. It was tough. And, part of it, I wanted to motivate them to, keep going to finish. But also I'm having to get volunteers to move. Yeah, there are logistical issues that I'm dealing with. And so poking and prodding, and just saying, I even told one team, these guys from New Jersey who were hurting, they were at the back of the pack, they were hurting. One guy was pushing his bike on every hill. And I told them, so this road, I was talking about the logistics of getting in and out of this TA, super rocky, rutted out road. But I said, we're not going to be able to get back in here. You guys are going to have to get to the next TA. And they're like, I don't think we can do it. And I was like, just get out to the pavement. It's about 6 miles, to the pavement. I said, we can get somebody back here to pick you up if you can get out to that pavement. Knowing full well that once they got to that pavement and they were like, oh, this isn't too bad. And sure enough, they finished the race. Those are those moments that, are, like I said, I get kind of choked up about it, because it's, we've all been there. And it was just very inspiring to see that. And there were a lot of that. They weren't the only ones. There were a lot of teams that were just struggling, big time at that point. And they all rallied, and that was, it was beautiful to watch.
So I got to chime in on this.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And I've never done like, I've done virtual races, race directing, but so I've never seen that where you're having those discussions with the team to poke and prod. And, but
your experience of 25 years of racing, you've been in those situations.
You've been in this
there, you know what works and what doesn't. And of course, you're kind of evaluating, and they have, there's a fight within the team, not necessarily a fight, a discussion, like, I don't want to go anywhere. Can you just, leave me and I'll go on, that kind of stuff's going on. So, yeah.
So in the Epic, this last Epic, I rolled it solo because we had just come off of another big race, and I wasn't sure if I'd be injured or not. But it was.
Oh, I know you registered 2 seconds to spare. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, like it's been 7 days since a 5-day race. Like big whoop, it'll be okay.
That was awesome.
But Mary Foster was there at the TA, and so was Matt, and so we're there, and like, Matt's like egging me on, like, dude, you've got this. You just got to keep going, dude. You're crushing it, and da da da. And Mary like scolded him, and she's like, "You're supposed to be the cheerleader for the teams at the mid and backpack, not the experienced teams that know what they're doing. Like, leave Chip alone, let him suffer."
Yeah,
I was like, I appreciated him coming up and be like, "Dude, you've got this, man. You're crushing it. Keep going." But either way, it's interesting that that's part of the job of those TA volunteers, and that we don't talk about it enough in AR, but. The racers really appreciate it, to get that little push, that little encouragement. I know, like Doug Silk, when he got hurt at the C2C, and he was at that TA giving people massages and egging them on, like, he was like this, like, oh my God, this is so nice to have that encouragement. So thank you for doing that, and thanks for your volunteers to keep pushing racers.
Yeah, I mean,
Jim, I didn't know that, and that's amazing, because I know you saw me several times.
Yeah,
and there was never a moment where I was thinking of quitting. No, I was enjoying the whole thing. Even when I mess up my navigation so bad, I wasn't like quitting. No, that never came into my head.
I didn't
know these were struggling like that. So I'm glad that you're doing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, and you might be there at some point. Who knows? I mean, we've all probably been there. Yeah, I mean, and you just have to treat. People are doing these things for different reasons, and their motivations are different. You kind of have to evaluate, like, okay, how do I get them moving forward? For Tomas, it's just like a kick in the butt. Come on, get your
I dare you
up and get your ass up. I mean that's Tomas. I mean, I don't know him that well, but I know him enough that would be the same with you and Andrea, Chip. I mean, but there's folks who are just they're probably in over their head, plain and simple. And you're just trying to, negotiate essentially with them to, again, my motivations are twofold. One, I have to get the race moving and keep it going. And also, I want these people to finish, and, seeing them come across the finish line. I mean, it's like watching your children grow up. I mean, I have to admit there was some of that. I don't have kids, but I think that's what it feels like.
I imagine it is. And I'm glad you brought that up, because to me, like, adventure racing is transformative.
Totally.
It's like you start a race different than you finish it, and that team probably had a really powerful experience realizing that they could do more than they thought they could.
Right.
And it didn't take too much for them, just a little bit of a nudge. And I just love that feeling. I think that's so great. And but you have had a little bit of a transformation too, as going from a racer to a course designer.
Let me cover something before we get into that.
Sure.
We got to linger on this for a second.
Okay.
Those of us that are experienced, if we take the time to give back, and Jim, you're doing it. You know what you're doing on a race. You're fine, but you're giving back by creating a course in your backyard to show racers an experience and prodding them along and encouraging them. But I would reach out to all racers that have done this. Whether we've done adventure racing clinics. You can volunteer at racers. If you can't race, you can volunteer at a race and encourage people, work at a TA. But like you said, Jim, like, I don't have kids, but after doing an adventure racing clinic and seeing people that they know nothing about a race, and then, like, for example, at the Buff Betty, I volunteered. I was the media guy, and I'm chasing racers with my GoPro that took the clinic.
I did plenty of
clinic specifically to cross the finish line of that race. And to be there and watch the joy in their face, like, brings tears to my eyes.
Oh, absolutely.
And then we did another clinic, and we saw people in that clinic that had never done an expedition, and they're crossing the race of this, crossing the finish line of C2C. And that's like mind blowing, like, holy crap, they've done something that they never thought that they could do in their life. and you had a little piece of that and
Yeah.
encouragement to get them across that finish line.
Can I
It's very rewarding.
Can I just throw out a kudo? So Mike Garrison was the winner. He's the USARA, director, president. And so, I mean, I knew about Mike before, but I've met him last year at Endless. And we're kindred spirits, I think. And I think we knew that fairly quickly, because this guy is racing for a top spot at a ARWS series race at Endless, right? We're tourists out there, we're there for, this is a vacation for us. I mean, we finished mid-pack, like we kind of normally do at that length of a race. But, we're not racing at his level, but, we would run across them because there were pro points that we would skip and they would do. So we saw them several times during the race, always would, not stop, but like, slow down and talk and be helpful and like help with, what our plan was and talk about stuff. And these guys were racing for a podium spot and, would take the time. And like, he didn't know me from Adam. And, that stuff back when I was racing competitively in the aughts, I did the same thing. Now that the prevailing wind at the time was you don't share information with all those newbies because you don't want to give away your secrets. I was the guy on the course going, hey, even though I was winning races at the time, would, try to stop and help those. I enjoy that. I wanted to grow the sport and I wanted to see those people do that thing. And so, as a course designer and, and whatever, I'm still doing that. But anyway, Mike won the race, cleared the course, and was still out there, cheering people on and, helping as much as he could. So anyway, I think that's just a tradition in AR, and I hope that remains and people, keep doing that and learn from that because it's incredibly rewarding and the best way to grow the sport.
I think it will. I mean, I think too, like, we all have a certain amount of empathy because we've been there,
Right.
Like I remember when a big deal was a 3-hour family race.
Sure.
And now a big deal for me is I've got a 10-day race coming up.
Yep.
So when I cross that finish line, it's going to be, I'm going to feel changed. So I think we all have that empathy at every level,
Yep.
Except for maybe Tomas, who has a great deal of confidence. But I was starting to ask you, Jim, about, going from being a racer to a course designer. And it's a great way to give back to the community that you've done that. I'm wondering if you would recommend that to other racers that are experienced. And I wondered what your experience was working with an established organization to get your feet wet doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have done it. I like I said at the beginning, I've been dreaming about this sort of, race of this kind of magnitude in Chattanooga area for a long time. And I could not have done it. I mean, I guess I could have, but I'd have to quit my job for 6 months, or something. So yeah, having AR Georgia, Warrior, Adventure Racing, take care of all the other things, and there's a lot of other things, is huge. So, I mean, it's the only way I could be involved. I don't know about other people, what other options there are. I mean, there are other options, you can, Warrior provides, boats for people. And, like you said, the TAs are fantastic. You can't do that, not that you can't, it's very difficult to do all that on your own. So, course designing is great. It's the fun part, really. I mean, there's a lot of minutiae and logistics, but it is the fun part. Giving back is really about the volunteering thing, getting out there and helping races. That's where you can really make a difference, in races, because there's a lot of race directors that probably just get frustrated over time because they just, don't get all the help they need, so to me, that's the biggest way to give back.
Yeah, I love Jeff's thought and his vision of Warrior, where he's expanding into, it's not just AR Georgia. Like, it's like we're doing a race in Colorado,
right? Same
as you. He's got another race course designer where he's bringing his business sense, the overlay, so that the person who wants to design the race, that's passionate about adventure racing, they don't have to launch a business and have all of the startup costs and the flags and all the stuff. Jeff can bring his stuff there, let you do what you want to do and show off the race, and then he moves on and goes and does it again. And I know Adventure Enablers is doing that. They're doing a new race, I think, this year in West Virginia, and a couple of racers that work for him, like Travis and the other fellow,
Michael.
Are they able to like,
Schindel.
yeah, I don't know. It's like I'm on a podcast. I can't remember. My brain's fried. Like, you know, a couple racers that race with them all the time are able to produce their own course over there, and with the overlay of adventure enablers on there. And I really love that model. I think if we're ever going to grow the sport, that's how it's going to work. Every little racer can't start a company to do 1 or 2 races a year. It doesn't make logistical sense.
I'm a 9 to 5 or so, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So.
Yeah, and Tomas, you had a bit of a transformation as well, because you went from being a person who provides commentary for a lot of races to being the racer. You know, has what you've done through providing commentary like helped you as a racer? Or did you think about that while you were racing? Did you wonder like, who's watching me? Like, I wonder if they saw me do that.
Or... I was watching.
That's interesting. No, I wasn't even thinking. I thought nobody was watching me anyway. and that's serious. I don't know. But yeah, every now and then I think, yeah, sometimes when I make the huge enough errors, it's like, okay, somebody's gonna watch me. Like, oh yeah. What the hell are you doing? You know? Yeah. So, I don't know. Most of the time I don't think about that, but sometimes the thought comes into my mind, yes.
Have you learned from providing commentary?
I don't know, maybe a little bit. I don't know. I do. Okay, one thing I can say is all of my nav errors, when I look at the race afterwards and I look at all the other dots, I wasn't the only one making the same nav errors that I made.
No.
Mine just were worse, but I wasn't the only one. I remember one of the ways, like I took a run trail and had to do an extra bike loop that I wasn't supposed to do. I look at the dots. Well, there you look at that. Mark Boyle is doing the same thing, just ahead of me, but he did the same wrong mistake, you know. Or when I took the turn into trying to get to that cave, all of a sudden the trails start heading north. I'm like, no, I'm not supposed to go north. And then I go my way back, and fair enough, I have 2 people also going in the same direction. And I was like, no, we're going north. We shouldn't be going north, you know. So those kinds of errors, I wasn't the only one making them, you know. It's just like. Now, the worst one that I did, I think I was the only one that made the worst one, which is when I was trying to find the other trail on the east side, I think. Wait, so on the west side, on the west side. Yeah, that one I spent way too much time. Yeah, that was the worst. I think I made the worst. I think I was the only one who made the worst one.
What was that near?
It wasn't after. It was after the tunnel. When you're going south to Pigeon Mountain,
is it the pond? Options, of course. Was it the pond?
In the direction of the pond, getting the trail that goes all over the mountain.
Yeah.
What happened is you have several choices. You can either go hike, bushwalk up the mountain first, or you can go to the trail to the right, and then go, and then that trail messes you up because then it heads north at some point instead of going south. And then I didn't find the southern point. I did actually find it, but I find it odd. So I decided to go to the tunnel again. And once I go to the tunnel, and then I went ahead and did the whole trail to the tunnel, and then that ends into some field. And then from there, that's where I really messed up because I couldn't find the actual trail that goes up. And then I went into this empty field that it was on the map. There was a clear field on the map, but I was there and I couldn't find the damn trail. And I just did all sorts of crazy, stupid navigation stuff. Then I said, okay, then I'm going to go ahead and bushwalk up the mountain to see if I can get. No, I start bushwalking up the mountain. No, there's a lot of cliffs there. I cannot do it. Then I start bushwalking on. It's like, okay, I got to rethink this again because I need to get out of here. This is not one of those things like, oh, let's keep the checkpoint. No, I still need to find the damn trail to get there. Finally, I recap, go look. Oh, and then I'm like, oh, come on, you gotta be kidding! It's right there. That one was my worst nav ever, and that cost me a lot of time. Then off went up that steep grade, which was fine. It was a nice trail, steep but nice. But yeah, that one was my worst one. Yeah.
Well, you're beating yourself up a lot tonight. You must get something out of racing to make you.
Now, there's one more thing on the bike. Jim helped me with the gears. My 2 lowest gears got messed up. They were misaligned. And then the chain, they were not getting in chain. And then my gear ring would just get out of there. So I couldn't use my 2 lowest gears. And because I rarely use them here in Michigan because I don't have as much climbs as there. but I needed those. I really wanted to use those two lowest gears on these big climbs, right? And they were not working. So I'm like, oh crap. And then Gene tried to fix them, but then he says, no, your chain is crap. So, you know,
his chain was rusted solid.
Yeah.
Oh
so I need to take better care of my equipment, of course.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I was without those two. My lowest gear is like this big, so I wanted to really use it on those big climbs, especially in the long big climbs. Well, I couldn't use them, so I had to like push my back. Now here's the situation: I start pushing my back uphill, right? And I tried to keep it between 5 kph and 6 kph, but I was constant. And I see people in their bikes pedaling. They pass me, then they take a break, then I pass them. Because I keep constant. I don't take breaks. Then they pass me again. Then I pass them again. Then they pass me again. Then they pass me again until I pass them. So I'm like, wait a second. I'm passing a bunch of people just by pushing my bike up.
Way to go. Great strategy.
For any solo racer, go on Amazon and there's a book. It's Park Tool makes it. I think it's called the Big Blue Book of Mountain Bike Prepare. Like buy that. Like it teaches you.
I got it. Yep.
The basic skills, because when you have to have a mechanic on your team, and if you're solo, you are the mechanic.
Yeah.
So you want to learn how to get your bike ready for the race, and then in the race, when you've done something stupid and you didn't oil your chain properly, then you can sort yourself out. So
I looked the chain, but it was all rusted anyway. It was all messed up.
It was irreparable. Quick story.
And I wanted to use that low gear. I really wanted to use it because I didn't want to push my bike on those hills. And if I had that big gear, if I had that low gear like that, I probably could have at a nice steady pace climbed that without pushing it.
Quick aside, my friend Jeremy Hoff was one of the people manning TA4, and they were getting back onto the bikes, and he was a professional mountain biker, did several adventure races, and worked in a bike shop for like 20 years. But anyway, he's like a kid in a candy store up there, just fixing people's bikes. You know, I turn around and he's got his surgical gloves on and just, working on people's bikes. So we, of course we're doing, people at mid and back of the pack. If you're at the front of the pack, you're on your own. But we were trying to get people to the finish line. That was the motivation, if you will.
And in a 48-hour race, the bike legs are long enough that your bike might be working perfectly when you get on it in the beginning of the race. And after 12 hours with a backpack and mud and rain and whatever, things stretch and things go wrong and things stop shifting correctly in the mud. And like
we
big expeditions we do, before we box up our bike and put it in the bike box and we don't see it again for 24 hours, we got to lube the chain, because you pull your bike out of the bike box and it's locked.
Another quick kudo is to these people hosting this right now, because at Blue Ridge one year, Susie pretty much ripped a sidewall out of her tire, and they stopped and helped and offered some patches and stuff that helped us keep going. So that's another, I think, that kindred spirits, if you will, about the rules of adventure racing.
I pulled out the toothpaste to.
You did take the toothpaste
of your thing, because I have to have a toothbrush, toothpaste. Like I can clean your bike tire. I got some. But again, it goes back to, it doesn't matter how hard you're pushing. If you see a human need, you stop and you.
Yeah, we do the same. That's just being a good human being.
All right, so we're coming up on the end of this. So now we're going to talk about future goals and stuff. So Tomas, you've got a big race calendar. You fell in love with this, and you keep pushing yourself beyond your limits over and over and over and over. And so, what big races do you have on the calendar moving forward?
Right now, I have Colorado and then Africa. Colorado will be 80 hours, which is ironic because on the last leg, I gotta be honest here. On the last leg of the paddle, I wasn't thinking of quitting Chattanooga. But on the last leg of the paddle, I was thinking, should I quit Colorado?
No,
I'm not doing that.
That's a definite low.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that though. And then And then the one in Africa is going to be this one is going to be pushing me really hard, and I need to do a lot of training from now on. I need to lose like 30 pounds from here to there. So I need to be committed, like, go on bike more often to the office, where the few days I have to go there. And I really need to step up my game. And yeah, part of the training is going to be Colorado, of course. But yeah, and just keep training and training. Sorry, keep training and training, and then lose more weight, eat better, and because I need to get ready for it. That 10 days it's no joke. But I really want to do well on that one, and I don't want to let the team down, because I pretty much brought those people together. I was the one asking for them. So
well, tell us about your team configurations for those races.
The team configuration for Colorado is going to be the people who I raced nationals with. I think it was my first year of racing. There are two younger guys from Cincinnati. One of them is in Cincinnati, and then the other one is in the Kentucky, south of Cincinnati, the border. I don't know the town. And they are like 30 or 32 years old. So they race with this old guy. And I raced with them several times. They seem to be pretty good. At least one of them is really good at navigation. So I essentially assist him in the navigation. So I think I'm better as a co-navigator than a main navigator. So whenever the main navigator does something that is like, no, I don't think that's it. That's where I kind of help a little bit better. So that's what I'm racing with. They did C2C. I did a longer race. After I did nationals with them, I did a longer race with them, Andrew and oh crap, I forgot his other. Anyway, Andrew and Josh. And then I did one race with Andrew, and then basically I started encouraging them, because originally I signed it with some random person for Colorado, right? But then I started to encourage my former teammates from nationals. They haven't done a longer race, so I started encouraging them. So then their first longer race was C2C this year, and I kind of like helped them at all. So they trained. The C2C was their training for Colorado, which is funny because I was kind of like the rookie of them back then, right? And they brought me into this, and all of a sudden I was doing longer races than they were, right? So now they have now they have their own 72-hour race at C2C, which I did together, and now we're gonna go ahead and do this one together, the Colorado one. So this is gonna be fun. So we'll see how it goes. I raced with them before, and they're okay. So for Africa, it's a little bit interesting, because for Africa, I just started procuring people, because I just sign up a team. I sign up a team with just me, and then okay, I need 3 more people. So I just start looking for random people. So for Africa, then through the thisABILITY page, I think I got connected with JD, who I don't really know. I know now by talking to him over. Crazy dude, very interesting fellow.
Crazy dude is being kind. Yeah. This JD Eskelsen, yeah. It's like done Eco Challenge and a billion races, and very well done.
So I talked to him, and within 10 minutes of talking to him, he's like, okay, so let's do this. You're in? Okay, yes. Good. So you're in. So then I started searching for the other 2 teammates, and I start asking around, and I found somebody from South Africa who raced in Croatia who I met. I start asking, hey, I need your help. Do you know somebody? Because I still need a lady, right? And I tried approaching, for example, Brenda's team. There were like 2, and then mine were 2. It's like, hey, we joined, but then Ron, of course, was there. And then the guy from South Africa helped me out and connected me to this other lady who was kind of like on the bench in a different team, like on the bench. So it's like, well, you're not on the bench anymore. So she joined us. JD and I kind of like talked to her, and she joined us. And then the third person, I also go through the website and Chris, and now what we do is we chat with each other on a monthly basis every month, and then we start kind of getting to know each other because we never met each other. So that's my team, and when you think about it, I freaking assembled that team. I can't believe
you went from like I've never raced, and then in 2 years you're doing the World Championships, 10 days. Your team captain putting together a team. Props to you for taking it from 0 to 100% in such a short period of time.
That's crazy, but I don't want to let them down either. So I need to step up my game like big time, you know.
Yeah,
so we talked
about, you have to go to the grocery store twice a day.
That's right.
150 pounds.
We're also setting the expectations as well. We're also setting, hey, you know, we're already telling everybody in the team At some point, we're gonna screw up. At some point, we're gonna get lost badly. We need to figure our way out. Hey, if whoever is the main, I don't, JD and Chris, the other persons, they're gonna be the main navigators. We're gonna have 2 sets of maps. I can assist with the other set of maps. But we already talked all the different goals and all the different expectations, and whenever we screwed up, what we would do, so that because we know that screw ups are gonna happen. We're aware of it. So that we're on the same page and nobody gets pissed off at each other or whatever, and nobody's getting angry and say, okay, we're gonna get lost. We're gonna turn our bike around. If somebody needs sleep, if somebody, so we already talk about all of this stuff already, to try to set everything in the same page, and we're kind of on the same page already. They're still strangers, so I don't know what's gonna happen, but one of them might snap. JD
Sounds like you're off to
a good start.
Yeah, you're off to a good start talking about all
JD seems like a crazy person, but he also seems like a pretty fun person to race with as well.
Yeah, and it, just so you know, at some point JD's pants are coming off during this race, and you're just going to have to figure that out as a team. How are we going to work with this? Maybe put them back on before the TA.
The picture of C2C of his pants off with his ass, which is very ass shown. We have a chat on our Africa page. I share that picture with the rest of the team so that they know what's gonna happen.
What's gonna happen? Just get used to it.
So the rest of the team already knows that.
Good. So okay, so Jim, we're gonna wrap this up. We're probably a little bit over time. So this is your inaugural race for Chattanooga. What are your future plans? Can we expect this race to be an annual thing? You already said you might do a 24 and a 48 next year.
I mean, that's going to be Jeff's call. I'm kind of pushing that way. But yeah, I mean, I've been planning the 2024 race. It was kind of what I wanted to do, originally. And there's just so many other, like I said, we barely scratched the surface of the opportunities in this area. So I can probably lay together 5 48-hour courses that hardly cross over each other, around here, which is one of the spectacular parts of where we live. That's definitely the in the planning stages. Hopefully we're shooting at a few dates. It's not going to be in June. Yeah. That's a good thing. And June was bad also just for there's so many other races going on. And people doing other expedition races like yourselves that couldn't make it. So that will change. I know for certain. But yeah, I mean, Susie and I we got a 12-hour hogback coming up here next month. Susie's been working just way too much. And so our training has definitely, dropped off, but we signed up for C2C next year, mainly because it's in northern Florida. I've done the trips back and forth across the middle of Florida several times, so I'm kind of done with that. But northern Florida is definitely a different world. So that's our motivation and our inspiration, and kind of looking forward to that going into next year. And we're still, looking at, we're opportunists, if certain people who might be hosting this podcast want to, another couple to race with, and they can, give us a call anytime.
You know how to get in touch with you.
We're on the bench. We're on the bench. Put us on the bench.
Nice.
Put me in, coach.
Well, we can't get enough of racing, period. So I really hope it happens someday. And it really was a bummer that we couldn't do this race. We really wanted to.
Oh, no. I mean, next year for sure. Put it on the calendar.
And just thank you guys so much. I mean, it's, Jim, a labor of love, and, Tomas, taking your time to cover the events that we've been doing and to come on our show tonight too. I just really, really appreciate you guys.
Well, thanks for having us.
And thank you so much for all the stuff that you guys do for the AR community, because you guys do a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Both you and Chip and Andrea, all three of you. Yeah, you guys do a lot. Yeah.
It's life-changing. I mean, those of us that have adopted adventure racing, it's not just a race, it's not just a sport, it's really a lifestyle. And I believe it's the right lifestyle, and it brings a lot of joy and happiness. So I think we all like to do our best to be evangelists and share our experience. And again, like this podcast, we like to keep it educational, and that way the newer racer that's a mid-pack team like we are most of the time, like they can learn from it. It's not all about the podium, it's about just getting through it and building teammates and relationships with your teammates, and the joy of crossing the finish line. It doesn't matter if you're at the end of the snake or in the belly of the snake or at the front of the snake. It's a life-changing experience. So thank you guys for taking the time to be on our show, and we look forward to seeing you guys at the next race.
Thank you.
See you guys.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment.
If you have a question for the next mailbag segment, call 757-354-4795 and leave us a voicemail or a text with your name, city you are calling from, and your question.
To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for thisABILITY Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.